subscribers. This does not go anywhere near far enough. It is insulting to victims to say you can still have this service if you're willing to pay. And it is monetising abuse. So let me be crystal clear. Under the Online Safety Act, sharing intimate images without someone's consent or threatening to share them, including images of people in their underwear, is a criminal offence for individuals and for platforms. My predecessor, the Right Honourable Member for Hove and Portslade, rightly made this a priority offence, so services have to take proactive action to stop this content from appearing in the first place. The Data Act, passed last year, made it a criminal offence to create or request the creation of non-consensual intimate images. And today, I can announce to the House that this offence will be brought into force this week. And that I will make it a priority offence in the Online Safety Act too. This means individuals are committing a criminal offence if they create or seek to create such content, including on X. And anyone who does this should expect to face the full extent of the law. But the responsibilities do not just lie with individuals for their own behaviour. The platforms that host such material must be held accountable, including X. Madam Deputy Speaker, Ofcom this morning confirmed that they have opened a formal investigation into X and will assess their compliance with the Online Safety Act. The government expects Ofcom to set out a timeline for the investigation as soon as possible. The public, and most importantly, the victims of Grok's activities, expect swift and decisive action, so this must not take months and months. But X does not have to wait for the Ofcom investigation to conclude. They can choose to act sooner to ensure this abhorrent and illegal material cannot be shared on their platform. If they do not, Ofcom will have the backing of this government to use the full powers which Parliament has given them. And I would remind X and all other platforms that this includes the power to issue fines of up to 10% of a company's worldwide qualifying revenue. And in the most serious cases, Ofcom can apply for a court order to stop UK users accessing the site. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government will do everything in our power to keep women and especially children safe online. So I can today confirm that we will build on all the measures I have already outlined and legislate in the Crime and Policing Bill, which is currently going through Parliament, to criminalise nudification apps. This new criminal offence will make it illegal for companies to supply tools designed to create non-consensual intimate images, targeting the problem at its source. And in addition to all of these actions, we expect technology companies to introduce the steps recommended by Ofcom's guidance on how to make platforms safer for women and girls without delay. And if they do not, I am prepared to go further. Because this Labour government believes tackling violence against women and girls is as important online as it is in the real world. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is not, as some would claim, about restricting freedom of speech. That's something that I and the whole government hold very dear. It is about tackling violence against women and girls. It's about upholding basic British values of decency and respect and ensuring the standards we expect offline are upheld online. And it is about exercising our sovereign power and responsibility to uphold the laws of this land. I hope this is a time when MPs on all sides of the House will stand up for British laws and British values and call out the platforms that allow explicit, degrading and illegal content. It is time to choose a side. Opposition MPs can either support the legislative action we are taking under the Online Safety Act or they can ally themselves with those who think the creation and publication of sexually manipulated images of women and children is acceptable. And I say in particular to the one Reform MP sitting in this House that if they continue to call for Online Safety Act to be repealed, they are shamefully supporting scrapping protections that keep women and children safe. If I may, Madam Deputy Speaker, briefly, I'd like to address calls from many MPs and others, understandable calls for the government to end its participation on X. I really do understand why many colleagues have come to this conclusion when X seems so unwilling to clean up its act. The government will, of course, keep our participation on X under review. But our job is to protect women and girls from illegal and harmful content wherever it is found. And I think it's also worth bearing in mind, with 19 million people on X in this country, and more than a quarter of them saying that they use it as their primary source of news, that our views, and often simply the facts, need to be heard wherever possible. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me conclude by saying this. I believe, and the government believes, AI is a transformative technology which has the power and potential to bring around extraordinary and welcome change, creating jobs and growth, diagnosing and treating diseases, helping children learn at school, tackling climate change, and so much more besides. But in order to seize these opportunities, people must feel confident that they and their children are safe online and that AI is not used for destructive and abusive ends. Many tech companies want to and are acting responsibly, but where they do not, we must and we will act. Innovation should serve humanity, not degrade it. So we'll leave no stone unturned in our determination to stamp out these demeaning, degrading and illegal images. If that means strengthening the existing laws, we are prepared to do so, because this government stands on the side of decency. We stand on the side of law. We stand for basic British values that are supported by the vast majority of people in this country, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Secretary of State, Julia Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and to the Secretary of State for advance notice of her statement. Last week, the public outrage was rightly expressed about the use of artificial intelligence to undress women and children in photographs by X's AI assistant Grok. The use of AI in this way, without consent, is wrong. It is disturbing, and in many cases, it is illegal. We support Ofcom taking enforcement action where an AI tool is used to generate illegal content, especially that of children. We support the government's stance on nudification tools. X itself has warned of consequences for anyone prompting Grok to make illegal content. The tools in question have been put behind a paywall for the easy identification via name and bank details of anyone misusing them. Beyond the platform, however, the Internet Watch Foundation has identified cases where perpetrators have used Grok in tandem with other AI tools to generate Category A material. As the chairman of the Culture Select Committee has rightly said, such mainstream AI tools must not become an enabling step in the child abuse production pipeline. Madam Deputy Speaker, law already exists to deal with much of this. The Protection of Children Act, the Criminal Justice Act, the Sexual Offences Act, the Data Act when the government voted against Baroness Owen's tougher amendments, the Online Safety Act. These laws should be enforced, and we now await Ofcom setting out its next steps as an independent regulator. Regardless of the law, it is right to expect AI companies to anticipate and prevent misuse of products before their deployment through rigorous red teaming. For a law to deter, I accept the enforcement threat must be credible, but its use must also be proportionate. Notwithstanding the soft backpedalling of the Secretary of State today, the government's appendage swinging over the weekend was extremely serious. Ministers mooted as an urgent remedy the banning of a site of 21 million monthly users in this country, despite another minister guffawing that banning X was conspiracy theory number 3627. Madam Deputy Speaker, since its invention, the internet and social media have been misused, often criminally, by people traffickers, paedophiles, fraudsters, the gutter dwellers of our society. Nobody is on their side. But government has never before proposed to wholesale block TikTok, Google or Facebook for the frequent and often flagrant misuse of their sites. It is an extraordinarily serious move against a platform that can be used for good, for uncovering scandals, sparking democratic revolution, and allowing day-to-day the free exchange of ideas, including ideas we don't like. It is that very power for good that sees Iran's mullahs reach to block the internet in the face of courageous protesters. This episode poses legitimate questions about who holds power in the internet age. Many worry about the accrued influence of big tech titans, myself included. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, they worry too about the power of government to divert, hide and duck accountability. They worry about this government. The uncomfortable truth for all of us is that some of this imagery sits in a legal grey area. What Grok produced at scale in 2026 is a modern-day iteration of an old problem, from crude drawings to Photoshop. Grok is not the only tool capable of generating false or offensive imagery, and not all of this content will cross the threshold into illegality. Plenty of it is sick, degrading, morally repugnant, but it does not cross the criminal threshold. What then is the Secretary of State proposing to do about the difficult enforcement choices that a regulator or police force must make? Because the risk is that with finite resource in a highly politically sensitive environment, regulators could be diverted from pursuing the most abhorrent and dangerous crimes. Further, if we wish to mitigate the risk to children, one simple intervention may help stop from sharing their own image too freely. That's raising the digital age of consent for social media to 16. The Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, fulsomely agrees as the cross-party consensus grows. Does the Secretary of State? Madam Deputy Speaker, the Secretary of State knows that there are geopolitical consequences to her rhetoric. Figures close to President Trump have already threatened sanctions. Has the Secretary of State engaged with the US government? Has she been advised on the nature of any retaliation were the UK government to block X? The US-UK tech deal has already been paused. We need clarity on what else is at stake. To conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Tech Secretary has said this government is as determined to ensure women and girls are safe online as we are to ensure they are safe in the real world. To this end, will she be ensuring the government enforces against itself for its failure to advance the rape gang inquiry, its failure to stop puberty blocking trials, its failure to implement guidance on single-sex spaces, its inability to deport illegal migrants who have committed sex offences? For while this government rightly worries about the online sphere, and we support them, there is plenty...
We're going to step away from Julia Lopez, the Shadow Technology Secretary there, following Liz Kendall's announcement that she is going to make it illegal to create or request the creation of non-consensual intimate images. This is over the use of AI's Grok chatbot on X.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today.
Legislation is actually extremely clear that it is a criminal offence to share or attempt to share intimate, non-consensual intimate images. It's going to be illegal to actually create or ask to create those images, and then with the ban on nudification apps, that will make a really important change too. This is not, as I've said, about anything to do with freedom of speech. It's about upholding British values and the British law. And I would also gently point out to the Honourable Lady who mentioned our allies in the United States that the President actually signed the Take It Down Act, which is precisely on non-consensual intimate images. So maybe she should do a little bit more actual research than just reading headlines online or in newspapers. I think the public looking at this will be clear about what they want to see change. I genuinely hope that this is something across the House that we can work on. You know, I actually believe that it is because I'm such a champion of freedom of speech that I want women to not feel that they are bullied, harassed of any platform, so their views and voices can be heard. And I can see by her colleagues' faces they may wish that the Honourable Lady took the same approach too.
Chair of the Select Committee, Chianwara.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And unlike her shadow, the Secretary of State is rightly passionate in calling out these sexually abusive images. The libertarian tech bro lobby has to accept that consent counts online too. In her letter to me today, the Secretary of State said that the Online Safety Act was designed for this, but she is being overly generous to the previous government. The Act was designed or fudged to give adults some protection from illegal content on certain surfaces and protect children from harmful content more generally, but not including generative AI and without making platforms responsible for the content they share. So will she now accept my committee's recommendations and do more to explicitly plug the gaps in the Act, particularly regarding generative AI, as well as tackling the social media business models that incentivize content like this?
Secretary of State.
I want to say I am genuinely grateful to my honourable friend for all the work she and her committee have done on this issue. Since coming to this post, I have read in detail their work. She will know that I have already said, for example, on the issue of AI chatbots, some are covered by the Act if they do live searches or they share user content, but I asked my officials to see where there were gaps. They've said there are gaps, and I've said I want to plug them, including legislating if I have to, if that is necessary. This is a fast-moving area. I think with the Online Safety Act, plus the additional measures we've taken in the Data Act and that we will take in the Crime and Policing Act, we've got actually quite a comprehensive suite of issues here and powers. But I know this is developing quickly, particularly around generative AI, and I am always prepared to look at the facts and the evidence and go where that leads me, and if I need to take further action, I will.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. For over a week, Grok has generated illegal sexual abuse material, non-consensual images of women and children, and without the disgraceful step of putting it behind a paid paywall without restraint on X. This is abhorrent, and these images are illegal. And unlike the Conservatives, we very much welcome the action that is being taken and absolutely want to work together to stop this illegal, abhorrent use of AI technology. This is why the Liberal Democrats have called on the National Crime Agency to launch a criminal investigation into X and for Ofcom to restrict access immediately. We also called for MPs from Reform to donate their earnings to X to those charities that are working for those victims of sexual exploitation. So where there are loopholes around AI creation of these horrific images, we're very pleased to hear the Secretary of State announcing the establishment that it's a criminal offence to create or seek to create such horrific content, and the work to criminalise nudification apps. Regulatory gaps, however, are not the only problem. Enforcement is failing too. While other countries have acted decisively to ban X, Ofcom has taken over a week to start an investigation and lacks the resources to take on these tech giants. What has become clear is that with the pace of technology, the government must look to future-proof online safety from new harms and harmful features. And so the Liberal Democrats have long been raising the alarm. We tabled amendments to raise the age of data consent, propose a doom scroll cap to curb addiction, and call for public health warnings on social media. So will the government support our calls on these actions? Because protecting women and children from online abuse cannot wait. And this matters in real life. To my constituent who was harmed by strangulation in a nightclub following online videos, to the victims of sexual abuse and violence, which often starts online. So does the Secretary of State have full faith in Ofcom's ability to enforce the Online Safety Act, given the pace of change? And will she meet with me? Because unlike the Conservatives, I would like us to work together on this issue, which is so important, to discuss the action need to tackle this, AI chatbots and emerging technologies. This is a moment for the House to act together. Inaction sends a message that abuse online is acceptable, and we must prove otherwise.
Secretary of State.
I thank the honourable lady for her question. I think I've said to this House before, you know, patience is not my greatest virtue. But that's because the public, and most importantly victims, want to see this happen quickly. I think I said in my statement, I expect Ofcom, and because the public expects Ofcom to do this swiftly. We do not want to wait months and months for action. I am, of course, very happy to, as is the Minister responsible for online safety, to meet with her to discuss further steps. I would say that, you know, there are clear responsibilities here in terms of enforcement of the law on individuals and their behaviour, but the Online Safety Act, which I know her party voted for, it does place some of those requirements on Ofcom. We have got to see action, and I'm sure that message will be heard loud and clear today.
Chair of the Education Committee, Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the Minister's statement and the additional steps that she has announced today? It is important that action that is taken keeps pace with the speed of the technology that it is seeking to influence. So can I press her on the timescale for the Ofcom investigation and any subsequent action that may be needed? Can I press her on the steps that the government is taking to ensure that children whose abuse is enabling the creation of images by Grok are safeguarded and protected, and that those responsible face the full force of the law? And can she confirm that if X continues to take the attitude and approach that we have seen so far in relation to these issues, that no options are off the table?
Secretary of State.
Absolutely no options are off the table, and as I said to the opposition spokesperson, the Online Safety Act does include that backstop power that if Ofcom decides they have repeatedly refused to comply with the law, they can apply to a court for serious business disruption measures. She's right to raise the issues around protecting children, that it is the most abhorrent crime. That is why this government has been so strong on this. I'm very happy to meet her and talk to her committee about what other steps we need to take. But we will make sure children are protected. No ifs and no buts.
Chair of the Culture and Media and Sport Committee, Caroline Dinage.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Secretary of State has given a very clear message on this, and I'd like to thank her for that today. She's right to say that this is not only about X and Grok, that actually there are very many generative AI platforms out there that are facilitating this illegal and dehumanising behaviour. Can I gently say to her, she's absolutely right that AI has enormous potential to reshape our lives, but over a year since the government attempted to sacrifice our world-beating creative industries and individuals' intellectual property on the altar of AI, we are still waiting for news of the AI bill. But I'm so pleased that she has drawn the line here, that she will not sacrifice the safety of women and children. I agree with her that there are gaps in the legislation. Of course there are, but there is a lot of legislation out there. But since the Online Safety Act came into force in March, Ofcom have taken so very little legal action against illegal content, which is just so prolific out there. So I asked the Secretary of State, how confident is she that Ofcom have A, the resources, but B, the willpower, the stomach to take on these big tech companies?
Secretary of State.
I'd like to thank the Right Honourable Lady for her comments, for her letter to me. I hope she's received that reply. I tried to get that done as quickly as possible, and her passionate campaigning on this issue. Number one, she knows that myself and the Secretary of State for Culture and Media and Support have been deeply engaging with colleagues on the issue of AI and copyright. We will update the House by the 18th of March on next steps on that. She knows I want to find a way that absolutely backs our world-beating creatives, but also enables us to make sure our world-leading AI developers and academics can use that too. That is no easy task, but I'm determined to find a way forward. I think the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. This is a real test case, and people want to see action. They want to see the laws of this land upheld, and I'm sure that Ofcom knows, and will hear once again from members in this House, that that is what they need to do to get people's trust and to get their belief that this will work.
Dame Emily Thornberry.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm very glad to hear that the Secretary of State is going to take swift action on this matter, and I'm very glad to hear that she's open-minded and prepared to do whatever it takes. It would be great if the Minister could also act as swiftly against the bot farms abroad who target our democracy with lies and with mischief. Sometimes I appreciate it's difficult to prove, of course, unless you are a social media company yourself. But however, this weekend, the uprising in Iran resulted in the internet going down, just as it had done in the summer. And guess what happened? 1,300 bot accounts that support the Scottish nationalists went down. Now, either it is that there's a lot of Scottish nationalists in Iran, which I suspect there aren't, or there was a deliberate attempt to try to undermine our democracy and stir mischief. This is very serious. It is just one example that can be proved. What is going to happen as a result of this?
Secretary of State.
I thank my right honourable friend for her really important point about the impact on facts, our democracy and the rule of the law. I know she takes this extremely seriously, and so does the government. The chair of the DSIT Select Committee has also written about misinformation, and I recently gave evidence about that to the Select Committee. I just want to reassure her that we are looking at all of these issues because, as I said, we want to uphold British values, the law and the facts. I think this is one of the really crucial issues in this whole debate because it can have really significant consequences if that doesn't happen.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Does the Secretary of State agree with me that in responding to a threat of this magnitude, a graduated response is required? And is she tentatively encouraged by the fact that X has decided to say that you cannot be anonymous in doing this sort of, in doing this sort of mischief, I don't think they are taking that step out of the goodness of their hearts. I think they're taking that step, please don't shout me down, I think they're taking that step because they are afraid of the sanctions that will come next. So should she not be encouraging Ofcom to impose the appropriate level of sanctions and to threaten to move to the next stage so that ultimately these big tech companies must know that if they persist, they will be fined again and again and again and ultimately stopped from broadcasting. They have blinked by doing this, but they must have the pressure ramped up in a graduated way.
Secretary of State.
I thank the right honourable gentleman for his question. I think I did set out in my statement the steps that can be taken. We know the informal investigation has been launched. I want to see that report ASAP. That's what the public would expect. And there are clear powers in the legislation to fine these companies up to 10% of their worldwide qualifying revenue, as well as this backstop power. I think that he will know other countries are taking a whole range of actions too. We've seen everything from some temporary bans in countries like, I think, Indonesia and Malaysia. Other countries are looking at amending their legislation to give them similar powers to us, as well as people making very clear that they want to put pressure on. I think all of this will send a very clear single message. I just hope MPs on all sides of the House would actually agree with that, and then we might actually protect all women and girls.
Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for an absolute clear message that this is illegal. What they are doing is, what X is doing with using Grok is illegal, and it is much the platform's responsibility as the people using it. I'm afraid, though, there is less confidence in Ofcom's ability to actually enforce the Online Safety Act as it currently stands and the improvements being made. Does she agree with me and many across this country that we need to start seeing real action by the end of this week by Ofcom, or we will judge Ofcom's leadership and individuals failing the British public?
My honourable friend is an absolutely powerful champion on this issue. I'm a feminist. I believe in deeds, not words. It's the deeds and the action that will provide the proof that the very, very tough legislation that is already in place, we need to see that implemented. British rule of law, Ofcom needs to act, and swiftly.
Manira Wilson.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the Secretary of State's announcements today. She rightly set out the abhorrent and criminal nature of the content being created through Grok. Our children, as well as being subject to this abuse, are being exposed to this kind of harmful content, not just on X, but on many social media platforms, together with AI chatbots that never sleep, doom scrolling and addictive gaming. Children and young people and their parents are crying out for further action. So could I implore the Secretary of State, will she finally now look at raising the digital age of data consent to stop big tech companies profiteering from our children's attention? She opposed it when we proposed it last year in the data bill. We now have a chance again next week through the Children's Wellbeing in Schools bill, which is currently in the other place.
Secretary of State.
So I know that parties opposite, and indeed many of my colleagues on these benches have called for a ban on social media for the under-16s. That's not currently the government's policy, but what I would say is that I will always be driven by the evidence. I am closely monitoring the evidence, including where similar action has been taken in other countries. We are very concerned about screen time. In fact, today we have announced for the first time ever we will have new guidelines for screen use for, I think, the under 5s, because we're very worried, including about recent evidence that children under 2, who have the highest screen time levels, are struggling more with language. So we're determined to take act, but I will always be driven by the evidence.
Samantha Niblett.
Deputy Speaker. Last week, I met with the brilliant Cindy Gallop, founder of Make Love Not Porn and Make Love Not Porn Academy, who, like me and many across this House, believes in empowering people to talk openly and responsibly about sex free from shame. Given how quickly tech is evolving, regulation, bans and blocks alone cannot shift behaviour of people like those using the Grok tool to make non-consensual sexual deepfakes. A shared cross-party commitment to lifelong age-appropriate sex and relationships education is vital to changing culture, promoting consent and preventing harm. So does my right honourable friend agree that despite the horror stories we're currently seeing, tech isn't an enemy, people are, including some tech bros like Musk, and that tech could be used for good by good people to aid lifelong sex education instead of exploitation?
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker gave me a look just now which said, speed up your answers. I know that's what she did, so I will. I absolutely believe, look, tech can be a force for good or bad. The reason I'm so passionate about this is because I believe it can be a force for good, including proper education of children and younger people. So on that point, I definitely agree with my honourable friend.
I'm not sure that I did give the Secretary of State a look, but I'm only going to run this statement for an hour in total, so members really do need to ask much shorter questions. Sir Jeremy Wright.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome what the Secretary of State has said today and welcome the robust encouragement the government has given to Ofcom to act on this issue. When she considers Ofcom's capacity to act, not just its willingness to do so, will she also consider whether or not injunctive-style relief ought to be available to Ofcom so that it can act urgently when circumstances require? But can I also ask her about risk assessment? Because of the centrality of risk assessment to the Online Safety Act process, it matters hugely whether a platform has assessed a risk, leading on to its safety duties to do something about that risk. Would she discuss with Ofcom whether X has done a proper risk assessment and kept it up to date? Because at the very least, we now know that X are on notice that its AI tools can be used for the promulgation of illegal content on its platform.
Secretary of State.
Yes, I will. I know X replied to Ofcom on Friday about what action it had taken. I haven't seen that. I'll ask to see it. And of course, I want to see, are they making the proper risk assessments as quickly as possible?
Neil Coyle.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank the Minister for action on this issue. But what role does the Minister think is being played by the tender in spouting false claims that this government action, this welcome government action, is about free speech?
Secretary of State.
This is about, all of this for me is about upholding British values and the British law. It's not about restricting freedom of speech. It's actually about enabling women to participate and not feel bullied and threatened off so they can participate. And I would just say that, Reform wants the Online Safety Act scrapped. Their leader has said the way forward is just to talk to them and tell them this isn't the way forward. I mean, so much for strong leadership. I wonder why that's their position.
Iqbal Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the statement from the Secretary of State. I wholeheartedly support it. And I'm absolutely ashamed and disgusted by the statement of the Shadow Minister. Elon Musk is a so-called free speech absolutist who has decried ministers as fascists and says that the UK must stop censorship. And now we have American politicians threatening future trade deals if we tackle non-consensual content and deepfake child pornography from being shared online. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that free speech should never extend to creating and sharing sexual abuse material of children or women? And does she agree that it is a responsibility of platforms that provide the tools, alongside Apple and Google, which permit these tools in our app stores, to ensure the...
Order. Questions have to be much shorter. Secretary of State.
Non-consensual intimate images of women bloodied and bruised in bikinis and child sexual abuse, that's not freedom of speech, it's abuse.
Charlotte Nichols.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. While X as a platform and indeed some parties in this place seem to content to profit from the proliferation of illegal sexually abusive content, this is a government that is meant to practice what we preach on online safety and violence against women and girls. The public, like me, are baffled by tough words from a government that continues to not just use, but prioritise X for its communications. If non-consensual deepfake pornography and child sex abuse imagery isn't the red line for the government to take its communications elsewhere, can I ask the Secretary of State, what is?
So my honourable friend and I have discussed this just last week, and I completely agree with her that we need to get our views and voices out on a whole range of other platforms. That I and many ministers make this point regularly, and I think there's much more we could do. As I said, we will keep this issue under review. As I spelt out in my statement, I think there is an argument actually that the Director General of the BBC made about keeping a voice on a platform that's used for so many people, but I do understand her concerns, and we'll keep this under review.
Jess Brown-Fuller.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. If Ofcom doesn't act decisively and swiftly to protect people in the UK, it risks sending a deeply damaging signal that even the most serious forms of online abuse will be accepted when they're carried out by powerful platforms that are owned by powerful men. So does the Secretary of State have full faith that Ofcom will enforce the Online Safety Act in light of the slow and inadequate response to child sexual abuse material being produced by Grok?
Secretary of State.
I am sure that Ofcom will hear loud and clear my comments, the comments of the Honourable Lady and others, that we expect the law of this land to be upheld and enforced, and to be done so swiftly.
Louise Haig.
Congratulate my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, for the strength and passion with which she's responding to this issue. Elon Musk is ideologically opposed to the kind of ethical guardrails and safeguarding that the British public want to see online. This update for Grok was put in place in August that facilitated these images. So where has Ofcom been in that time? Doesn't it reveal that the way we legislate and regulate in this place is not fit for purpose with the challenges that AI is presenting day by day? So will the Secretary of State take this opportunity to consider a far more flexible, principle-based, responsive approach to the way we regulate?
I think my right honourable friend raises a really important issue. You know, everybody in this House knows just how long it took to pass the Online Safety Act, and by the time it's been implemented, things have moved on very, very quickly. It's a really critical question how we move as quickly as the technology is moving, and that is an issue I am considering deeply.
Blackman.
Will the Secretary of State consider adding user-generated content, the definition of user-generated content, AI responses to prompts by users, as part of that definition, so it's included within the Online Safety Act? And also, will the Secretary of State or one of her ministers meet with me to discuss my concerns about children being allowed to live stream and the risks this poses to children?
I will definitely meet with anyone who's got evidence about that and what we need to do.
Jess Sarto.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Having campaigned for a ban on notification apps, I hugely welcome the Secretary of State's announcements today. And we've all seen just how AI has been used to humiliate and sexualise women with bullet holes, blood, gagging, bruising, even the horror of a Jewish woman being stripped of her clothes and placed at Auschwitz. I, like a number of colleagues over the weekend, have also had my own treatment and stripped into a bikini by AI on X. Much less worse for many victims, but a reminder of what many thousands of women face daily. Will my right honourable friend therefore look at how the government can work with industry to introduce AI watermarking alongside ways of enabling users to mark that their pictures or videos should not be digitally manipulated without their consent?
My honourable friend is a formidable campaigner on all these issues, and I'm of course happy, as is the Minister for Online Safety, to meet with her to discuss all these ideas further.
Tom Gordon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the statement by the Secretary of State. One of the things that I am slightly concerned about is that when she talks about a ban, either limited short-term or long-term, is the actual way in which that would be enforced. Is she confident that Ofcom would be able to do so in response to X and what we've seen? And what I would ask is, how do we ensure that if we're going to end up with a ban on it, temporarily or otherwise, that we don't allow people to circumvent that by the use of VPNs, and what's her thoughts on that side of things?
I mean, I hope we don't get to that stage. I hope that that X abides by the law and that Ofcom uses the powers that it has. I think that is extremely important. We want to see that as quickly as possible. I'm so sorry, the second part of the question, would the honourable gentleman say? Yeah, I think...
Can I suggest to everybody who's yet to ask a question that second parts not required?
Didn't hear, that was my fault, I didn't hear it, but yes. We will see. I believe that this can be enforced. I think we have comprehensive legislation, probably stronger than almost any other country, and now it needs to be enforced.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I very much welcome what the Secretary of State is doing in proving that none of this is inevitable with the development of technology. But she herself has just said there is a concern that our legislation is behind rather than ahead of the curve. She knows this is not just about Grok, this is about AI chatbots. I know the Baroness Kidron in the other house has brought forward legislation on that. And will she also defend all of those talking about content moderation and how we get this right in future, including standing up to governments who are not free speech advocates if they bar those people from their shores?
Yeah. Let me just keep to the point on AI chatbots. I have said that we're confident that some are covered by the legislation, but officials have told me they believe some are not. I'm currently working this through. I would say I want to move swiftly, but I want it to be effective for all the reasons that we've said, but I'm happy to meet her to discuss that further.
Sarah Pochin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Given the devastating harm caused by non-consensual sexual deepfakes and the reality that the Online Safety Act is ineffective against international social media platforms, how will the Secretary of State ensure the immediate removal of this material and deliver practical support to women and girls from the moment they become victims?
By backing the law, not calling for it to be scrapped, which is what her party wants.
Steve Race.
Speaker, the Southwest Grid for Learning is based in my constituency. It does really important work keeping people safe online as part of the Safer Internet Centre. They also run a programme called Stop Non-Consensual Intimate Image Abuse, and it's a programme that people can access to stop these images from being uploaded to platforms through a technological solution called hashing. Some platforms use this, but not all platforms use this. Would she, with my right honourable friend, encourage all platforms to take up this technology and promote this service to people too? Thank you.
I think that sounds like a very interesting and practical solution to many of the challenges we're discussing, and I hope he'll send me more detail.
Rachel Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
I cannot pretend to understand the complexities of AI or bots or the stuff that we've been talking about this afternoon. But what I do understand is the impact that sexual abuse has upon children and girls in my constituency. On Saturday, I was talking to a grandmother who told me that her granddaughter had been groomed and as a consequence had become suicidal, was locked in her room and was unrecognisable from the young woman that she had been just 3 months ago. I live in a very rural part of the country. Can I please get a reassurance from the Secretary of State that she will put as much money and facilities into the rural parts of this country to prevent this disgusting habit than she will in other parts?
I mean, I will do whatever it takes, and I know that this is what the whole government thinks. And I would say, in particular, the Prime Minister, who it is a personal priority for him. I would say that the people who abuse children in every century, in any different form, they find a way to do it. And our job is to find that and to stop it, and that's what we'll do.
Annalise Dodds.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I agree with the Secretary of State that the production of these disgusting images does not amount to freedom of speech. It amounts to freedom to abuse, freedom to harass and freedom to commit crime. Will she condemn what seems to be an organised campaign of intimidation against female staff at Ofcom, who, after all, are just carrying out the responsibilities they were given by this House?
Yes, absolutely. We, all of us, worry about our constituents, family and friends and the people who work with us, about what happens to them if they have the temerity to speak out. And we will not be bullied. We will not be cowed. And I know my right honourable friend won't, for sure.
Anne Davis.
Many women and girls will be shocked to hear some colleagues within this House suggest that deep AI fakes is a question of free speech. Like Cymru is clear, digital abuse is not free speech. Does the Secretary of State agree that protecting women and girls must never be conditional? And will she outline what the government will do, not only to criminalise the creation of deep fakes, but to stop these platforms from creating this technology in the first place?
Yes, and I would refer the Honourable Lady to my statement, which I think spelt out in detail all the action we're taking.
Lizzie Collins.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Firstly, I can't accept that it's okay for the government to stay on X now, but I do welcome the strong action the government is taking on online violence against women and girls. This is part of a wider problem of violent pornography that normalises and encourages violent sexual fantasies. So does she agree with me that Ofcom has a duty to act swiftly and firmly?
100%.
Caroline Bowden.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the Secretary of State's clarity over these disgusting and illegal images on X. I've chosen my side. I deleted X from my phone on Saturday. Can the Secretary of State guarantee that Ofcom will have the powers, the teeth and the funding it needs to keep up with the tech bros as they invent new and innovative ways to degrade women?
I believe Ofcom does have the powers and the funding to do that, but this technology is developing rapidly. So that is why I have said to the House, I will absolutely keep monitoring it. Where we see gaps, we will plug them, because this is so important for the country.
Florence Eshalomi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for her comment this afternoon, and agree with her that anyone seeking to say that this is free speech is totally incorrect, and we must continue to redouble our efforts to protect women and girls. Part of this abuse happens on social media, and there's a big conversation, as the Secretary of State knows, in terms of banning that from the 16s. More teaching unions are coming out, teachers, parents, a large majority of the public as well. The Secretary of State said that she's prepared to go further. Will she be prepared to go further and actually make sure that the government are reviewing what's been done in Australia to make sure we are banning social media for under 16s?
We are closely monitoring what's happening in Australia. It's banning social media for the under 16s isn't currently our policy, but we of course are looking at the evidence. I'm particularly concerned about the addictiveness of this, the impact on mental health. I would just say a couple of points, which is, I think we also need to talk to young people themselves. Some who are acutely aware of the problems but don't want it banned. And I also hear what organisations like the Molly Rose Foundation and the NSPCC, who worry that a ban would push things more underground, and they worry about the cliff edge when young people reach 16. I think we need to take all these issues into account. I will always be driven by the evidence.
Dr. Ellie Chance.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for her statement. I share her outrage and horror at the use of AI to create these abusive sexual deepfakes. Can I press the Minister on implementation? Our legislation is only as good as its implementation, its enforcement. She talked about acting swiftly. Will she set a hard deadline for Ofcom to complete its investigation? And will she set a hard deadline for X to act? Otherwise, she will impose the full fines possible.
Well, the legislation that we voted for in this House, the Online Safety Act, actually gives those powers to Ofcom. They give and I would expect to see a swift timeline, and I would expect to see any investigation done as soon as possible. People in this country and victims do not want to wait months, and the legislation says the powers are for Ofcom to apply to a court for serious business disruption measures, and I think it's really important that happens. I would also say, let us not forget that X doesn't need to wait for any of this to act. They need to do that immediately.
Raft.
Speaker, and can I add my voice to those who are expressing shock at equating holding to account people who profiteer and enable production of sexual abuse images of children somehow with undermining free speech? It is disingenuous and it does a disservice to everyone. I would like to encourage the Secretary of State to continue to put pressure on Ofcom to make sure that they act decisively and effectively against companies who break the Online Safety Act.
I thank my honourable friend. I am sure Ofcom knows only too well the expectations of not only this House, but more importantly the country and victims, that action must be taken, and we will continue to make that point.
Ms Jarvis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Having read accounts of women who have had their image manipulated by Grok AI, I'm dismayed by attempts by some to try and twist this into an argument about suppressing free speech. It is abuse and it is illegal. I welcome the news that the government will criminalise nudification apps. But does the Minister agree with me that as Elon Musk has so far refused to take any responsibility or recognise the severity of online harms and is unlikely to be bothered about the threat of fines, the only way to stop this abuse is to block access to X in the UK now?
I hope I've made my position on that. The legislation and my expectations clear, but I'm more than happy to discuss that further with the Honourable Lady.
Rachel Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'd like to thank the Secretary of State for standing up for women and children with conviction, with dedication, with no ifs, no buts. And I share that dedication as a member of the Women and Equalities Committee. I supported our inquiry into non-consensual intimate image abuse. Witnesses told us that one of the most damaging aspects of this form of abuse was the length of time that those images remained on those platforms. So could I ask what steps the Secretary of State is taking to make sure that all these images and deepfakes are removed from the internet as quickly as ever possible?
My honourable friend is another amazing campaigner on these issues. She's right again to raise the issue of speed. The legislation, I think I'm correct in saying, expects platforms, when they know that this material is there, to take it down swiftly. It's interesting to note in the Take It Down Act that has actually been passed in the United States on non-consensual intimate image abuse has a 48-hour time limit. I always look at what's happening in other countries to see what more we can learn here.
Saoirse Eastwood.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the actions outlined by the Secretary of State today. Nearly 10 years ago, Molly Rose Russell died as a result of suicide from content she had seen online. In Northern Ireland, one of the world's most prolific paedophiles operated with ease online. We know already the risks here, but I would ask the Secretary of State to make sure that devolved regions are not left behind in our attempts to be able to tackle this global scourge. I
will do anything I can to make sure this is sorted in every part of our proud United Kingdom. And if she has further ideas, I hope she will write to me about them, because I'm very keen to see.
Lola McAvoy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Secretary of State's swift action. All power to you. Long before this Grok app was invented, I met a father whose daughter had taken his own life after an overly sexualised fake image was circulated of her at school. That is the impact of these unregulated actions by these anonymous people. Will the Secretary of State please use this opportunity to highlight the fact that creating, facilitating, hosting and sharing these images is against the law, and that no VPN or amount of money will prevent you from facing the full force of it in this country?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. The legislation is clear. It is illegal to share or attempt to share. It will be illegal to create or attempt to create. The nudification apps will be banned too. And it is really, really clear here, VPNs or not, the platforms have to make sure that their duties under the law are fulfilled. Crystal clear. That is what this issue is about, and we're determined to make sure the full force of the law is felt.
Will Forster.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I've been contacted by a significant amount of my constituents in Woking who are appalled that Grok and X are being used to create and then disseminate child sexual abuse. One of the issues they've raised with me is the length of time it has taken us to act versus other countries. Malaysia and Indonesia have already banned these platforms. Is the Secretary of State not concerned that it took Ofcom a week to launch an investigation?
I said to the House, you know, patience is not my greatest virtue. I want to see us act faster, faster and firmer, and I'm sure this message will be coming out loudly and clear to Ofcom and to X, who have the power to sort this out now.
Thank
you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I welcome the Secretary of State's serious and rapid action to tackle non-consensual sexual deepfakes on social media, which we know have generated child sexual abuse images and we know have been weaponised to abuse and silence women, including many in this House. Now, we also know that AI's capabilities are growing, it's being more widespread, so can the Secretary of State tell the House how government is monitoring these evolving AI models to prevent them from causing harm in future?
My honourable friend will know that the AI Security Institute, and I would say this is one thing I definitely pay tribute to the previous government for establishing, because it is a world leader. Its job is to monitor in depth, working in partnership with those companies, the harms that are there. I am in regular contact with them. I think that's really important, because I do believe the potential of AI can be used for great good, but only if it is safe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the statement from the Secretary of State today, but the idea from some that X moving Grok to a premium service is somehow them blinking, I think, is for the birds. I think it was actually a deliberate strategy by X to create this content generation tool, which is disgusting, but actually drove up demand and waited until the demand was at a critical mass and then decided to make it a premium product so that they could make money from it. And they're continuing to make money from violence against women and girls, which is what this is. It cannot be denied. Now, the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy released just before Christmas said that it would ensure that the UK has one of the most robust responses to perpetrators of VOG in the world. Now, I just gently say, with other countries already having banned Grok, is this really the most robust response that we could have?
I mean, other countries have different legislative systems. Ours has been the Online Safety Act, which I believe is actually, along with the other measures I've said, one of the most comprehensive ways of addressing this issue. She's right to point to the speed and swiftness of action. I think that is a point heard time and time again in this House. But I would say that this government's determination to tackle violence against women and girls comes from the top down and goes right across every department. I would also say, this is a point I should have mentioned earlier, that my right honourable friend, the Minister for State, who is a joint minister in DCIT and DCMS, is looking at the issue of advertising including the monetisation of some of these behaviours. It is a really important issue. Follow the money is a really important thing, and we want to address that.
Final question, Sarah Russell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The overwhelming majority of child sexual abuse imagery produced online remains very sadly produced by children themselves, having been groomed by adults in order to do so. Can the Minister please lay out what steps the government is going to take to ensure that there are device-level protections that stop children from taking and sharing nude images of themselves?
My honourable friend has raised a really important issue. I'm happy to discuss this with her further, because that is exactly what is happening in this country. Could I also say, Madam Deputy Speaker, I know there are many colleagues who've not had a chance to ask a question, but I will find a way that they can ask that question, and I will get them a response through the department, including through my parliamentary PPSs, because I know you all care so passionately about this issue, and I want to continue the debate. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Can I thank the Secretary of State for her statement? I suspect. Point of order, Jim Shannon.
The Minister indicated to one of the other members that when it comes to Northern Ireland, I think through the Policing and Crime Bill, can the Minister of Secretary of State confirm that it will be modified to include Northern Ireland?
The honourable member will know that that is not a point of order. I made it very clear that the statement was going to run for an hour. The Secretary of State seems to be itching to respond to that. Perhaps you can do so in writing. I think it's very unfair on members who have not had a chance to get in that we should seek to extend this via point of order. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Finance number 2 bill, committee. Now.
Order. Under the order of the House of the 16th of December, we shall now move to committee of the whole House.
Okay.